Redditors who were fired in the first week of your job. How did it happen? The guy was looking for bar staff who could hit the ground running. I told him I don't much experience behind an actual bar, just a limited one at race events, like 15 drinks compared to 50. He said as long as you are good I don't mind. He gave me 3 shifts. I text on the Sunday to find out what shifts I had the following week and he says, oh, I asked somebody to tell you not to come back. Tell you what, I'll give you another chance. You can do 2 more shifts. I am like, alright, frick you, but whatever. I turn in Monday, I am on my own. The normal staff didn't turn in. I got everything ready between me and the cook. After my 2 shifts he told me not to come back because I wasn't experienced enough. Took me a month to track the bastard down to pay me. He stopped answering my calls, so I used a different phone and got him, so he was actively avoiding me. I used to do tennis court maintenance on an island in Florida at a resort. My first day, the shop pro was late and I'm sitting on a golf cart after brushing the clay courts with Monica Seles just standing around waiting. She busts out with, "Want to hit a few balls?" So I'm down. How awesome is this? If you've never played with a professional tennis player before, you have no idea how fast that ball comes flying at you. It was like she was just practicing serving at me and I may have, being very generous, tipped a couple maybe. Well, the shop pro shows up 15 minutes later and they do their thing. Comes up to me afterwards, tells me I'm fired because policy says the court maintenance cannot interact with the pros. Best thing I've ever gotten fired for. Yeah, wouldn't want to foster a fun working environment. In college, I tried picking up a summer job at a furniture factory. I lasted 1 week. Over the 40-hour week, I was put into 22 different jobs. After finishing up on Friday, they let me go because I wasn't fitting in anywhere. They also weren't happy with me because I didn't show up on Thursday for the weekly off-the-clock staff meeting a half an hour before the shift started. The one I didn't hear about until they were chewing me out for not showing up too. Off-the-clock staff meetings are just the biggest possible amount of BS. I refuse to attend meetings unless I'm compensated for them. If I'm there, I'm being paid. I showed up to a restaurant for my first day and there was a notice on the door that they had been shut down. I have so many unanswered questions. Restaurant owners do not tell anyone if they are about to close, not even their managers. The entire staff will walk out and take everything not bolted to the ground with them. You were probably hired by a manager and they didn't have a clue. Hired as tech for a private investigator. They mostly did cheating spouses or insurance fraud. Second day I walk in to get started in my new office. Told I'm let go. Don't disclose why. Something about my background report and a state police matter. Never been in trouble. Never been arrested. I was so confused. So I pull my own records. Nothing. My last name is common in Portuguese Brazilian areas. They had mistaken me for another woman. Same name as me and of similar age, who had quite a lot of bad behavior. I wonder how reputable they are if they didn't think to not only cross-check the ages or go by last 4 of the social, but at least the state police weren't investigating me, which would explain why they were confused when I called them hysterical asking if they needed me to come in for questioning. This doesn't sound like a very good investigating agency. When my wife deployed, I got a job at a warehouse in our hometown and signed up for a 55-hour workweek job. I worked 6 AM to 5 PM 4 days. Then on Friday my boss asked me to stay from 6 AM to 7 PM. I said I couldn't because my son's daycare closed at 6 o'clock, but I would stay until 5:40. He called me a slacker and demanded I'll have one of my in-laws pick up my child for me. I left at 5:40 and he called me to tell me I was fired. Frick that guy. The job required specific licenses and technical knowledge which I said I didn't have during the interview. They hired me anyway. 3 days in and the director of the company finds out that I didn't have any and I was fired. Co-worker of mine had to fire a new employee on his team on day 4. The new hire brought her girlfriend to work, who was not employed with us, and she sat in the lunchroom on her laptop, working on God knows what. This occurred for 2 days before anyone realized she didn't work here. We told the new hire to tell her to leave. She said, if she goes, then I go. They both left. I was working as an intern for a law firm and was tasked with moving a whole bunch of boxes full of legal documents from one storage warehouse to another. The warehouse they were in was damp and moldy and generally awful, and after one day of being in there moving boxes out, I fell super sick the next day. My third day, they essentially told me to either come to work tomorrow or never again, and I didn't come in and never called again. Didn't end up getting paid for my 2 days of work either. Should have been a call to Osher. I got fired from a landscaping job after 2 days. Supervisor told me my work was fine but that I didn't chat enough. Maybe I would have been more willing to chat with him if he hadn't been hanging out on the porch naked when I showed up at his house on the second day to drive to the work site. Seems like he was looking for people he could bond with and then violate during the date. The manager hired me for back of house at Pizza Hut. One night it became apparent that there were too many people working back of house and we weren't all needed. Last one in, first one out. People that have no idea how to staff a business make me insane. Day 2. I was fired because we can clearly see you aren't getting it. This was at a deli. They never actually showed me anything and left me on my own to serve customers during a lunch rush. Nothing was labeled to tell me what it was and their selection was huge. The customers were actually very nice about it and pointed to what they wanted. But when they finally returned, they yelled at me in front of customers for the place being untidy. The owner turned into a demon woman when she told me to clean their meat slicer and I asked for training. When I was let go, she bellowed and returned that uniform. And make sure you wash it. A friend and I ran the uniform over with his car several times. I then dragged it through the mud and posted it through their letterbox when they had closed. Hahaha, I love the last bit. I was working as a bookkeeper for a local middleman construction supply company. They bought things like toilets, fixtures, and would sell them to construction companies. My job relied solely on the incoming vendor invoices of the day, so I could record them, do their markup, and send out invoices to their clients. I started on a Monday, and the following Monday was a US federal holiday with no mail, so they told me on Friday that since there was no mail, it didn't make much sense for me to come in because there wasn't much to do and I was new. Okay, cool. Monday afternoon, there's a message on our answering machine. This was years ago, and asked if I could call them back. After doing so, I got reprimanded for not showing up to work by the same guy who told me to take the day off, and told me not to bother coming in again. Applied for job at Jimmy John's, went to final interview and was given the sandwich list. Told you better memorize this or else, you start tomorrow. I looked at the list that was twice as long as the actual menu, said this job won't be for me, but thanks. I'll look elsewhere. Thanks for the opportunity. A week later I was called and told that I was fired for not showing up. Was hired as a bartender, a job in which I had plenty of experience. First day on shift, they assigned me to filling up helium balloons for their night party, along with one other girl, rather than mixing drinks. Whatever, I'll do what I'm asked. Hundreds of balloons later, my fingers were dang near severed from tying off the stupid things by hand. But I was finished. They told me to go on home. Didn't hear anything about my next shift, so I called the owner after a couple of days to find out when she wanted me back in. She says all of the balloons you filled up came down from the ceiling way before midnight. If you can't even fill up a stupid balloon, I'm not going to trust you to make drinks. 1. They're unrelated. 2. How exactly were you able to determine which balloons I filled versus the other girl? 3. Frick you. My fingers hurt just thinking about it. Sorry to say, but they just used you to fill balloons for one day because no one else wanted to. They never had any intention of keeping you around. Failed the mandatory new hire drug test. I've never done drugs. It could have easily been an error on the testing side of things. I've had a lot of bad experiences with occupational drug testing people. Print shop. One of the senior employees was deaf. I don't know sign language, and I told them so directly when they asked during the interview. They hired me anyway. 3 days into the job I was fired because I couldn't talk to the senior employee without writing notes back and forth. I was 2 weeks in at Taco Bell on campus. They hired me on the spot and had me come in the next day. I showed up and clocked in. The manager gave me a brief 30-minute tutorial on how everything worked. then told me to clock out for 15 minutes until their labor caught up with sales. So I did and came back in. They put me on the line and during a rush I was a little slow. She got pee and told me to do some dishes. After about 5 minutes of that she made me clock out again for another 15 minutes. I came back and did more dishes and ran the deep fryer for the rest of the night. Every 20-30 minutes she had me clock out and take a break. I was scheduled a 6-hour shift and took an hour and a half of breaks. This was a common theme over the 2 weeks I worked there. But I'll be damned if I didn't take home my pay and free custom made Taco Bell every night. Dude, I think you were an illegal employee. I was 18 and moving to a new town to go to college. I wanted a part-time job for extra money, so a couple weeks beforehand I applied, interviewed and was hired by a telemarketing company. Evening and weekend hours. Exactly what I was looking for. A week before I was to move I showed up on a Saturday and did the training program. The manager said I did great. She really seemed to like me. She said your first day is a week from today. I said I can't start then because that is the day I'm moving. Can we push it back one day? She said no problem. I get a call from the same manager on Wednesday reminding me my first day is this Saturday. I say no, it's not. It's Sunday. I'm moving on Saturday. Remember? That's right. My mistake. See you on Sunday. Moving day arrives. It's the end of the day. I go out and grab some fast food for dinner. When I get back there is a message on my answering machine. It's literally the first message I have ever got in my own place. I was living with my parents before this. Who could it be? This is Jane with XXX Telemarketing. I don't appreciate having my time wasted by someone who's not responsible enough to show up for their first day of work. This is your official notice that your employment with us is terminated. Jane is the person I spoke to a week earlier, and on Wednesday, that said my first day was Sunday. Frick you, Jane. 16 years old, I got a job picking tomatoes. Fired on the first day when they realized I was colorblind after picking all the green ones. I pressed the wrong buttons on the till and sold a £50 watch for 50p. My boss made the right decision there. I mean, if this was your first day or even first couple of days running a register by yourself is more the fault of the manager, unless the transaction was in cash. Then you probably shoulder noticed you were giving back a lot of change. I made it explicitly clear at every point of the hiring process that I would not be able to work weekends, and then they scheduled me for a weekend. My brother was asked to think long and hard between going to a final for a 400 level university course and showing up at his minimum wage job. He didn't have to think too hard about it. 16 years old, day 2 of work, hired as a busboy for a fancy restaurant, cleaning up a table of food, drinks, and stuff. As I finished up, I tripped on my too long pants and dumped a whole tray of all the food and drinks all over several people that were very important. Got fired right on the spot. Oh man, that sucks. I brought a PB&J. Turns out the manager was very allergic to peanuts. I worked at a grocery store deli for like 2 weeks maybe. Each product had its own 8-12 digit code, only nothing was scanned and manually entered. The product codes weren't with the product but instead were on little bits of paper, like post-it notes, scattered all around the deli walls. Sorry, but I can't memorize hundreds of product codes in 3 shifts, while also trying to figure out what meat is even what. I had a kidney infection and wasn't able to work over my university's October break. When I told the manager owner I was very ill and had a doctor's note, he told me to not bother coming back. He was clearly in butthole, so I think it was for the best, but it didn't help my self-esteem at the time. I was happy when his store went out of business a year or so later. Pizza shop. Second day there. Thursday. I ask the boss when my next shift is. He says Sunday evening. No problem. See you Sunday. Show up Sunday. Fired for not being in on Saturday evening. When I say I asked when my next shift was, he says I should have checked the schedule. When I ask where it is, he pulls a napkin out of his pocket and shows me. I told him he can keep his crappy upstate pizza and away I go. There was a guy at my old job who was fired while training when he got caught stealing from the honor system snack money jar in the break room. He claims he needed gas money to get home and was gonna pay it back. Sad either way. I got a job at a framing store. First day was a Monday, and I came in to do paperwork and train on the awesome pneumatic tools we would be using. I looked at the schedule and noticed that they had me opening the following day, Tuesday, at 10 AM. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be a problem, but I had a second job serving at a coffee house bar music venue. I'd be working Monday nights until 2 AM and wouldn't be able to get up early and make the hour-long commute to be there on time. When I interviewed and accepted the job offer at the frame store, I had specifically blocked Tuesdays off my availability. I mentioned this to the manager, who said it's no problem. Just come in on the next scheduled shift, Wednesday. So I show up bright and early to begin work on Wednesday, and the first words out of my manager's mouth were, "Sorry dude, but I'm gonna have to let you go." Apparently, I was hired to replace another employee who was a total piece of crap, and he knew somehow that I was his replacement. When I didn't show up that Tuesday, the post called the district manager, who in turn called my manager. The district manager told him unequivocally to fire me for a no-call no-show. Disheartened that I somehow managed to lose a very promising job through no fault of my own, paid way more than I could get in my college town, I went into work at the coffee house. When I got there, the assistant manager broke the news that the coffee house was closing down because the owner didn't want to operate two separate businesses. So I guess I lost 2 jobs in one day. I worked at an up-and-coming coffee shop for a total of 6 days. I had recently lost my job and had worked at a Starbucks before, so I figured it would be the same sort of pace. I made an effort to be as kind to customers as possible, take down orders and make them exactly as asked and get it all done in a timely manner. I thought I was doing great. The owner would occasionally step in and help when it would get busy, but she was easily distracted and would religiously make the wrong drinks. I was pulled into the office on my last day by her husband, who asked me how I liked the job, then proceeded to tell me that his wife believed I wasn't a good fit, mostly because I was late, never happened, and had trouble remembering orders. Also untrue. Now I occasionally stop by and order a coffee and pastry and relax in the awkward tension while I watch the owner continue to hand out the wrong drink orders. Knew a tour guide who, on one of his first tours, said watch your step because much like your lazy wives in bed, these rocks won't move for you. Fired 0.03 seconds after. Not fired, but once I didn't pass my probation training week. I was working for a British health insurance company and the woman training me was really bad. She'd turn up late and smelling of booze and didn't explain anything very well. She forgot to request my access to the computer system and I was struggling to pick up anything of my role. When I spoke to someone about this, they said thanks, we'll look into this, and then the next day on the Friday I got pulled in at 9:30 AM and told I'd failed to pass my probation phase. They told me it was because one day I'd had a bra strap showing. I'd worn an off-the-shoulder jumper with a vest top under it, but nobody told me this wasn't allowed and there was nothing in the staff handbook, and I hadn't shown effort or willing during my training. The feedback from my trainer was written up and it was all complete crap. She turned around all my comments about her behavior on me. Frick her. Lucky escape if that's how they treat their staff. I was fired from this crappy organic grocery store in Pittsburgh the first week. They wouldn't tell me why, just that it wasn't working out. Later, someone I knew socially who also worked there at the same time told me the manager told him that I was fired for being fat and sweaty. I worked next to a pizza oven and they would open the doors and turn off the AC. Also, it was the middle of summer. Like a year later they went out of business. From what I understand, they had a huge turnover. What annoys me the most is why did they hire me if they didn't want a fat person working there? Happened to my brother, but he was hired as an account executive for a smaller software company, and by week 2 or 3 the company got a new CEO and the first thing they did was layoffs across the board. My brother was part of a team of 10 people or so that dwindled down to 3. He was there for less than a month and ended up getting a severance package. I got a job at a local taco joint. It was a slow day and I was training with the manager. We're in the back and the manager takes a chip, dips it into a guac tub and eats it. I'm like, cool, it's snack time, so I follow suit and he looks at me and says, you can't do that, I have to fire you. I thought it was a joke, but then he fired me. It was so ridiculous that I wasn't even mad. WTF. Messed up something minor in a patient chart. Something completely fixable. Doctor yelled at me for the mistake. I apologized. face down embarrassed. I was asked not to come back to work because I didn't look the doctor in the eye. Not my story, but a friend. He was hired at a factory job to do QA on an assembly line. All he had to do was look at the products coming down the line and remove any defective or foreign objects. Oh, did I mention he was the kind of kid that got car sick while reading or playing games? Within 3 hours of starting his first shift, he gets nauseous and throws up on the assembly line. They now have to shut production down while they clean up. They send my friend on a break to help him recompose. After an hour or so, he gets back on the line and within minutes throws up again. He was not asked back the next day. When I was a kid, I was fired from Menards 3 hours into my first shift after they discovered I had worked at Home Depot. I never understood that one, but Menards was a private company, so what I do? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.